Alola, guys! If it's good enough for the people in Pokemon Sun and Moon, it's more than good enough for me. I am Syrachime, and I welcome you to my first video in a series of videos that are going to have to deal with competitive battling in Generation 7. So before I actually get into any kind of competitive battling aspects and analysis or anything like that, I'm sure you guys have a question wondering who am I and what kind of experience do I bring to you guys that I would make some kind of guide or anything for you guys on YouTube. Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you guys didn't ask that, and I did. But getting to the meat of that issue, I am not necessarily a VGC player. I have never went to VGC tournaments or participated, but I have been in competitive battling since Generation 4. I have been keeping an eye on the competitive scene since pretty much since its introduction, the introduction of Diamond and Pearl back in 2008, 2009. Well, that's not when the games came out, but that's when I got into it. But every generation I have kept up with things, seen how things have progressed, and I have a really good understanding of how the games have unfolded up to this point. And while I haven't personally participated in VGC tournaments, like I said, I have done a lot of reading, I've done a lot of studying. I have a great deal of knowledge that I have not been able to really share to the ability that I would love to. So I would like to actually do that, and I'd like to start right now by giving you an analysis, just a brief analysis, of where we've came from and how we've got to this point in Gen 7. So, if you're like me, you probably would agree that Generation 4 was probably one of the best Pokemon generations to be in competitive battling. Generation 4 was where, for me at least, everything seemed to start. I know there was stuff before Generation 4. You had Generation 1, 2, and 3, which, up to those point, you didn't have mass communication, but that completely changed in Generation 4. In Gen 4, we received the ability to get on the internet, to communicate with people we couldn't before. Battles were being done in ways they had never been done before. It was truly revolutionary for its time. And Generation 4 for me, like I said, is just where everything started. I learned about Smogon, I learned about the tiers, I've learned about different movesets, I learned about EVs, IVs, stuff I'm not going to cover in this particular video. But I learned about everything that was possible, and battling in that generation, it was just such a magical time. It didn't feel like there were some of the problems that we kind of had in Gen 5 and Gen 6. And for me, it felt like just the core, the best time, the golden days of competitive battling, at least in my opinion. Maybe some of you feel differently, but let's fast forward to Generation 5, and this is where I feel like an aspect of competitive battling kind of started, and that being the over-centralization. So, while there was over-centralization in Generation 4 with Scizor, Salamence, Tyranitar, it wasn't nearly as bad as what happened in Generation 5. For those of you that battled in Gen 5, you remember the Weather Wars, right? How common Drizzle Politoed was, Drought Ninetales. They were really good teams in concept, but the problem was so many people were using that, and not much else was usable because of that. People were going for power and speed, and there was just a lot of over-centralization that took place in Gen 5. Personally, Gen 5 is one of the more forgettable generations, both in terms of gameplay and its competitive battling, but that's just my opinion. You might feel differently, but for me it feels like over-centralization started and it just snowballed and became even worse in Generation 6. Now, in saying that, Generation 6 did give us some really good concepts and different mechanics to the game that made it really interesting. Mainly, we were introduced to this new type of mechanic called Mega Evolution. For those of you that don't know what that is, I'd be surprised if you didn't. What it does is it basically takes a Pokemon, throws on top of it 100 extra base stats, and then sometimes it will give you a new ability, new typing, and just pretty much changes how the Pokemon was. This was a really good concept because it took Pokemon that were previously unusable like Pidgeot, Steelix, Ampharos, and turned them into something that was actually quite viable. On the other hand, it also took Pokemon like Mega Kangaskhan, Salamence, and just completely turned them on their head. These Pokemon did not need Mega Evolutions. Mega Kangaskhan, well, Kangaskhan did, but when Kangaskhan received the Mega Evolution and obtained its ability Parento Bond, it became something of that over-centralization thing I talked about before. Now, if you played on Smogon, this was not necessarily as apparent because Smogon has a history of testing things, seeing how they affect the game, and then banning it if it's not up to their standards. I have nothing against that. I have nothing against Smogon. This is not about that. This is about the Generation 6. If you were away from the Smogon tier, if you played the VGC or you did like I did, you did the doubles or the singles battle ratings, I think that's what that's called. If you did that, it was not uncommon to see Pokemon that really over-centralized the game. So the weather wars that started in Generation 5 snowballed even worse to give us Mega Kangaskhan, or other over-centralizing Pokemon like Talonflame with Gale Wings, Mega Salamence, just all these Pokemon that just over-centralized the game. I mean, case in point, prior to the new generation being released, Generation 7, I went and looked online while I was doing my double battles and found out that 48% of the doubles battling community on the rated battle spot was using Mega Kangaskhan. That is just absolutely insane. Now, I understand that Mega Kangaskhan, it did deserve the Mega Evolution, but I'm not trying to single out Mega Kangaskhan. The point of this is, over-centralization has been a snowballing effect since last generation, or since the generation before last, and it only continued and got worse as of Generation 6. Now, while we did receive the Mega Evolution mechanic, we also received the Fairy typing, which is a brand new typing that turned the Dragon dominance of the past generations prior to Gen 6 on its head. Unfortunately, while the typing is good with an immunity to dragons, it also was not a very widely distributed typing. There were certainly enough fairy types, don't get me wrong, but when the list of usable fairy types consisted of Sylveon, Klefki, Azumarill, maybe Clefable, then you've got to realize that something's wrong, because if those are the only 4 usable Pokemon fairy types out of maybe 10, 20, something like that, there's a problem. So dragons, what should have been in check before, were not necessarily checked, and that's just part of that over-centralization. Because there were only so many good fairy types, people were using those as opposed to something else. So why am I bringing up the over-centralization issue? I know I've talked about that. It wasn't necessarily prevalent in Gen 4, but why am I going hardcore on it on Gen 5 and Gen 6? Well, the reason I'm going on about it is because those generations limited what you could possibly use. And I absolutely hate that. I'm the type of person that feels like every Pokemon can be usable. Every Pokemon in the game, no matter whether it's Salamence or Luvdisc. I know that's a stretch, but even Luvdisc could possibly find usage in a Pokemon battle under the right conditions. Now, using those Pokemon is really difficult, and you won't do so necessarily unless you get past the over-centralized Pokemon. And I think Generation 7 has blessed us. Truly feel like it has blessed us with that opportunity. Now, what I mean by that? Well, let's scoot away from Generation 6 into Generation 7 and analyze what Generation 7 has given to us. So Gen 7, as of now, the biggest feature introduced into the game is Z-moves. Z-moves have one of 2 options. I'm not going to go over it in too detail because I'd like to have a separate video on this. But basically, as a Z-move, you either have the option of a magnificent setup or a nuke option. And that right there makes a lot of Pokemon very attractive. So, pretty much every type in the game has a nuke option that you're able to use, and that could really turn the battle on its head. Even against Mega Evolutions, this is incredible. And this allows us to have, this gives us the chance to actually use a great deal of diversity that we maybe couldn't have in other generations. In addition to that, the fairy typing that was introduced last generation received a lot of new Pokemon to that type. We've seen a lot of new additions, and because of that, the fairy typing is going to become a little bit more prevalent as well. So basically what I'm saying is this generation, thanks to Z-moves, increased Pokemon in the typing, has the potential to be the most diverse generation of all times. Even over-centralized threats from last generation, I think Game Freak took note of because of just how over-centralized it was. Megas Kangaskhan, I'm not singling out a whole bunch, but Parental Bond has been nerfed, Gale Wings has been nerfed, Pokemon that were previously overpowered like Gengar have been nerfed. There have been a lot of touch-ups to the game that give this generation the possibility to be the most diverse ever. Now, there was one thing that was introduced that I am a little bit concerned about. That was the introduction of Ultra Beasts. So Ultra Beasts, in a nutshell, are Pokemon, maybe? Who knows? They are creatures that you are able to catch, and what they are pretty much is they are solid in one area while being weak in another. Case in point, Pheromosa, the mascot, exclusive Pokemon of Sun or Pokemon Moon, is extremely fast and powerful in both its stats, but it has horrible defenses, so priority takes that out very easily. Another Pokemon, you had the, I don't even remember, the lobster Pokemon looking thing, but it excels really well in its physical attack, HP, and defense, but it is horrible on the special side. So you can kind of see how these Pokemon excel in certain areas while they don't, if you can call them Pokemon, but you get my point. Some of these Ultra Beasts do have the potential to be a little over-centralizing, but at the same time, I think, and I'm hoping that maybe it won't be necessarily the case. Otherwise, that snowball of over-centralization is just going to continue, and I'm hoping this is the generation that it is not actually possible. So, that's kind of what's new in Generation 7 as of now, and as for what I predict is going to happen, I do think Ultra Beasts are going to become a pretty big part of this competitive scene. I also think that Mega Evolutions are going to be pretty significant, but I don't see them as significant to the point that they were last generation, and I don't see things over-centralized as they used to be. I really think Z-moves had the potential to be one of the greater aspects of the game, and I hope that will contribute to the diversity to the game itself. So, what I'm hoping for and what I'm predicting in this generation is that we can actually see the diversity that we are going to, well, that I'm hoping is actually included in the game. And the whole reason I'm making this analysis is because, like I said, I am one of those people that absolutely loves to use... I firmly believe every Pokemon in the game is usable. I love picking up options that are not so good and finding a way to actually make them work. Case in point, last generation, Mega Steelix, okay, it's not the worst Pokemon, but a lot of people were writing off Mega Steelix, saying that thing cannot be used, it's outclassed by Mega Aggron, you can never get the circumstances up just right where it could work. Well, let me tell you what, Mega Steelix works really well in Trick Room and Sandstorm. I know that's a lot of features, but just kind of think about this. I had a Trick Room setter of Gourgeist, and if Mega Kangaskhan came in, I was able to easily burn that thing, set up Trick Room. I had a Tyranitar that set up the Sandstream, along with Mega Steelix, and you would be amazed how much I actually won with that team against teams that were considered over-centralized, had the common stuff. Because of that team and a couple of other additions, Rotom Heat was a good one that helped with my Grass-type spores, stuff like that, the Among Us at the time. But anyway, just to kind of prove the point, under the right conditions, I actually checked, under 20 battles that I actually took part on, 16 of those were victories. So, that's not bragging, that's just to make a point. Mega Steelix, I could not find anything online that would support it was usable, it was worth the time of day. I couldn't even find movesets for it. I had to improvise and find my own moveset. And under the right conditions, under a Trick Room, under Sandstorm, the power was very noticeable, I was able to take out threats, and of course Mega Steelix wasn't the only Pokemon, there were other stars in the team, but you get my point. Every Pokemon in the game has the potential to be usable, and that's the whole reason I'm starting this series of video, to analyze and guide you guys, and give you guys guides on how Pokemon can actually be used. But I'm not only going to be doing just Pokemon guides, I want to actually take a look at every type in the game, do analysis of that. I want to do analysis of team types, of weather teams, terrain teams, Z-moves, all this stuff I want to take an in-depth look at, give you guys guides on how I think you could use this stuff to your advantage, and help you guys to see that there really is more to Pokemon than just, the cookie cutter stuff that everybody uses. While I understand that people use the stuff that they use because they want to win, and that should be your goal, but think about this. If you're not using a team that you're not having fun with, you're just doing it to win, are you really enjoying the game? So, I love Pokemon. I have been a huge fan since the very beginning. I have been through the competitive battling scene since Gen 4, and I have seen how people have used this stuff, and I've heard a lot of people say they just use it because they want to win. And I really want to bring a change to that. I am very passionate about Pokemon. I've been trying to find my way to express that, so I'm going to do so by doing these competitive battling guides. I know this is not the first time this has been done, but I really think I could help bring knowledge to the table that maybe other people haven't, or maybe contribute onto what's already been out there. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that give good guides, and I am so grateful for that, but I think there's so much more that people are just missing, potential untapped in every Pokemon, and all you have to do is just battle with it to see it. But we'll cover those things as we actually get further into the video, or as we get further into the series. But for now, like I said, I just wanted to do a little analysis of the generations past leading up to this one, give you my prediction of it, and I think I've done a pretty good job of that, so that'll be pretty much it for this video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope to give you guys guides on stuff you could use. Hope you could take this with you into competitive battling and use it for your advantage. But I guess until the next video, thank you so much for watching, and it's been an honor to make this video for you. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and until next time, I will catch you later.